Hi, everybody. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Nicole Price, and I actually learned about her by watching her being interviewed by somebody else, and she seemed really smart. So I looked her up, and then I found out, oh, she studied chemical engineering. But that's not really the work she does now. She does leadership training and coaching through her company, Lively Paradox. And she's also written a couple of books. So I'm really interested to find out about her transition from chemical engineering, her company and the services it provides, and about her books as well. Welcome to Teach the Geek Interviews, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. First question, where did your interest in chemical engineering come from?
Well, I was encouraged to pursue engineering because I was good at science and math as a child, and so I don't know that I was naturally interested in the field in as much, or what's more likely is that I was encouraged to pursue engineering.
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting you use the word encouraged. I actually studied materials engineering in school, and I did a master's in biomedical engineering, but I wasn't encouraged at all. I was told to do it. My father told me to study engineering, and I just did. Back then, I just did whatever he said to do, and I said, all right. It worked out all right, but yeah, encouraged is definitely not the word. But but I mean, you picked chemical engineering specifically. Is there a reason you picked that particular discipline?
When I think about all the disciplines where there are options, I was probably more skilled in chemistry. And so the chemical engineering connection is just where I landed.
Okay. And then, so when you graduated from chemical engineering, did you ever actually work in the field before you started your company?
I worked in the field of chemical engineering for 10 years, and then worked leading engineers and technical professionals, and then coaching engineers and technical professionals in operations and IT for several years after that. Before switching full-time into coaching and developing all kinds of people.
Okay. And then, obviously, just like you said, at some point you made that transition. What exactly motivated you to make that transition from chemical engineering to, training and coaching people?
Yeah, so I'm not really sure if your audience is aware. I imagine they are, that there are two ways to progress when you are in STEM fields. One is the technical profession, the technical route, and the other is the leadership route. And I just took the leadership route.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That definitely that makes sense. I mean, I remember I used to work in medical devices as an engineer, and obviously that's the technical aspect. And the idea of leading people was always kind of, I wouldn't say scary, but just something I was never all that interested in, because you have to now deal with all of their stuff too, in addition to your own. But I guess that's something that you didn't mind doing, since it's something that you ended up doing anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, there's two ways. You can either go super deep into your subject matter expertise, or you can, depending on how large you want your organization to be, there needs to be someone who's going to be responsible for performance reviews and succession planning and leading the people, and that's just the route I took. I don't know that one is better than the other, just two different ways.
Yeah, for sure. What attracted you to that particular route?
So while I am good at engineering, while I can do science and math, my personality is just more aligned to leading and inspiring and motivating people that it is towards going super deep on any engineering technical content.
Okay, that's fair enough. And so you eventually started your company, Lively Paradox. What services does the company provide?
So primarily for technical professionals, and if you could think more broadly about that term to include any person for whom there's subject matter expertise about their role, and then that person progresses to leadership. So it could be a teacher who is now a principal or superintendent. It could be a lawyer who's now a chief legal officer. It could be somebody who has worked in welding, who is now a plant manager, but anyone for whom their original role was highly technical and now they have switched to leading other people, we provide leadership development or professional development to help them with the leadership aspect of their job. Leadership is one of the few jobs that people tend to think that you can do without any training, and we try to bust up that myth by providing people some of the evidence-based proven methodology for leading well.
Interesting. Oh, I never realized that. Well, you know what, now I think about it, oftentimes you have somebody that is a technical person and they might be good at their job and they get promoted into some sort of manager or supervisory role. But just because you're good at engineering or whatever your technical expertise is doesn't mean you're good at leading people. So it's definitely it's definitely necessary to get that kind of training so that you do that kind of job well.
Yeah, for sure. Like you wouldn't allow me to drive a city bus without training, but leadership happens to be one of those that we say, hey, have these 27 people report to you, and we'll give you some training after you failed at it for a while. And we just try to take a different approach and say, you know what, there are some evidence-based proven strategies that can help you be a better leader, and let's start there first so that you don't have to have a sink or swim mentality. Leadership, just like everything else, can be learned, and that's what we believe at Lively Paradox.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely have heard the saying that leaders are born, but they're not made, or something like that. So but you're a proponent of, just because you started off not being a leader, you can always build to becoming one.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that has to be the case, because how many leaders are actually born? I mean, you still need people to lead. So if there's a shortage of those type of leaders, well, we got to find them somewhere. We got to make them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't believe that leaders are born at all. We believe that people are born, and either through experiences with their families or experiences with through schooling or just lived experiences in general. Some people learn leadership characteristics more informally than others, and so therefore it looks like they were born that way. But people are just born human, and we teach them leadership characteristics.
In your opinion, I guess, what is a leader? Or who is a leader? What does that mean?
People follow you. It's very simple.
Okay, right. So you don't necessarily have to have that the title of manager or supervisor or anything like that. You can still be a leader, regardless of the title.
Yeah, that's what we believe. If no one's following you, doesn't matter if you have the title, you're not a leader.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So, I also mentioned in the intro that you're also an author. Can you tell us a little bit more about the books that you've written?
Yeah, so I have 2 self-published books and one that is published book. One, The Lively Paradox, is it's a book that I wrote, honestly, to try to not have to talk about the topic of diversity and inclusion ever again. That strategy.
I laugh because it's kind of funny, because you got to go over the same things over and over again when it comes to diversity and inclusion, isn't it? Don't you? But yeah, I fully agree with you. So yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so I wrote that book to say, hey, if you want to know, get an authentic perspective on my lived experiences with diversity and inclusion, here, read this book. You don't even need to call me. It's kind of backfired on me, though. People appreciate my problem-solving approach to a topic that's intellectually challenging and emotionally charged. So I just take a more realistic approach to the topic of diversity and inclusion in that book. And the first half of it is designed for those of us who can impact the work climate or any organizational climate. And then the second half is if you happen to be an underrepresented minority in any category except for race. This is not a race and equity book. It's actually a diversity and inclusion book. The second half of the book is full of strategies for you to be able to succeed inside of any organizational climate. And that's what that book is about. The second book that I wrote is called The Power of 7-Second Chances, How to Obtain Success Without Firing the Rest. And it's a book about how to use empathy and compassion to improve outcomes in the workplace. And then the book called Cultivating Culture, published by Red Letter Publishing, was an anthology of sorts with several other experts about leadership, and just really talking about how to motivate people and make sure that people are placed in the right positions based on personality and interest. so that everyone can thrive.
Oh, wow. You've been pretty busy if you've been able to get, three books, I guess, that you've written. Was it three?
Yeah, I'm not sure if your leaders are familiar with George Fraser, but George Fraser of FraserNet came to my company when I worked inside of an organization and talked about, how do you write a book? And he's like, just really pull together all of the insights that make you unique and stick them all in a folder and just title the folder New Book. And he recommended actually having a physical file, not an electronic file, but I imagine it could work either way. I did follow his instructions directly and made a physical file. And when I got ready to sit down and write the book, I realized I had lots of sources to choose from, and it didn't take very long, actually.
Something you mentioned about the first book that you were talking about, the Lively Paradox book, you said that it's about diversity and inclusion and not about race and equity, so underrepresented but not race. Is there a reason you did it that way? Because obviously when I hear people say D&I, they're including race.
Yeah, and I think it's from I'm going to say this is what I know for sure, based on my experience, is that all forms of difference except for race start with internal prejudices in our head. We then get together with other people and we discriminate. And then those people, when they are in charge of the rules, the policies, the practices, create institutional oppression. And they all follow that 3-step process: prejudice, discrimination, institutional oppression. Race, on the other hand, started in the reverse. We, as I'm sure I'm not sure if any of your listeners have read The Myth of Race, but white and black from a social construct is not really a thing. Now, there's not a single institution in the United States of America that does not have disproportionality based on race, but that does not mean that race is a real thing. You and I we are not black. I am Nigerian and Cameroonian and Irish and all things that my genetic makeup entails. Just like people are not white, they are Irish, they are Norwegian, they are English. And we have constructed this concept of race, put it in laws, and then if we go back 500 years, we can track those laws to discriminatory behavior. That discriminatory behavior, 20 generations removed, has us all having prejudices in our heads that we don't even know the history behind it. And so our philosophy is that it's irresponsible to include race with all other diversity and inclusion efforts, because I can get you to move the needle on diversity, all other aspects of diversity, by teaching people to be nicer, by training people to be nicer, by teaching people how not to discriminate. If I want to fix race and equity issues, I have to tear down systems, policies, laws. I have to change those things within my realm of control in order to fix it. And so it's irresponsible to act like we can fix racism by being nice. Niceness does not fix racism.
Well, yeah, I never really, I've never really thought of it that deeply, but now that you're talking about it, I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think you can really fix racism by being nice. It's more, it's deeper than that. You're absolutely right about it. So
we have a diversity and inclusion program that starts with the personal prejudice, then it progresses to leadership discrimination, and then progresses to oppressive systems. That last oppressive systems component, or that day, includes race and equity.
Okay, because I'm guessing the companies that you work with, when they think about diversity and inclusion, they're certainly thinking about race. So when you break it down to them that race isn't just about being nice to people, it might take some explaining just to kind of wrap their head around your ideas of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, but it only takes about 2 minutes, like I just explained to you.
Okay, so they just take it. They don't. There's no kind of pushback on that.
No, it's just, but it is a unique way of thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. And so, obviously you do leadership training, you do coaching, and I'm assuming that public speaking and just communicating with others is a big part of the work that you do. Is public speaking been something that you've always been good at? And if not, what have you done to get better at it?
So I was raised in the church and got my first public speaking experience in the church, speaking to sleepy crowds in the afternoon as a little kid. And so in some ways, I would say that I just get a lot of energy from the crowd, but public speaking is also something that can be taught. Many organizations like Toastmasters or the National Speaking Association teach public speaking skills. I don't particularly specialize in that from a professional standpoint, but do give keynotes and can informally give people some tips around the topic.
Yeah, for sure. And just like you, when it came to public speaking, for me, it started at church too. And that also wasn't encouraged. It wasn't something that I had to do. I didn't have a lot of choice as a child. I'm looking back on it.
Well, I think I'm just being tactful when I use the word encourage.
So get up there. When it comes
you're going to give your Easter speech.
And you'll like it too. Smile.
You are going to like it.
Yeah. But when it comes to you when you're presenting, do you ever have a process when it comes to putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, so ultimately, I try to avoid taking speaking engagements that have nothing to do with my professional expertise. If I am not an expert in the space, I try not to just take the speaking engagement just to take the speaking engagement. So that's step one. Step two, when things kind of fall into my wheelhouse, there's some foundational ideas that span all of the topics that I speak on. And I always kind of start with those foundational ideas and then think about what is the one thing I want the audience to walk away thinking, feeling, and believing, and giving them just the basic tool. If I were to think about one of the major mistakes I see public speakers make is try to take their 20 years worth of expertise and put it into 20 minutes for an audience to try to digest. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And so just, trying to help people think more clearly about the fact that if adults have never been exposed to your content or your ideas before, then how can you use common language so that people can understand and then make their way forward? That's pretty much my process. I do also try to make sure that I align my content with the theme of the organization's conference.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a bad idea to try to, especially when you keep people's attention, to try to take all your expertise and put it into something, just a short or however long presentation, because you're going to lose it because, as you said, they're definitely going to be overwhelmed. It's smarter to, as you mentioned, just have, at least one good, clear takeaway that they get from it, so at least they can remember that, because, it's difficult to try to keep people's attention at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I would also just say that your audience does matter. If it's an audience of your peers and they are interested in the technical background and content, feel free to provide them that. But my experience as a public speaker is that people are looking to be inspired around an idea, not necessarily looking to know everything there is to know about an idea.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And something else you said that I think is really important is talking about things you actually know about. And you think that'd be obvious, but sometimes, at least to some people, I don't think it is.
Well, and the challenge of not talking about things you don't have any expertise in is that when it's time for Q&A, most people are going to ask you questions just to see if you know how smart they are. Their questions are not really about understanding the content better. And so if you are not credible in that area, at Q&A, you're going to get eaten alive.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that, Nicole. So when I worked as an engineer, I used to have to go to conferences. And a lot of these conferences used to be pretty academic centered. So oftentimes the people that are presenting are grad students, postdocs, or professors. And the people asking the questions in the audience would be postdocs, grad students, and professors, sometimes from competing labs. So you're absolutely right. They're asking you questions to try to trip you up. And it's interesting sometimes we've seen the back and forth between a person in the audience and the presenter, because oftentimes they'd be in the same field and doing the same type of research, but potentially coming at it from different aspects. And they're all trying to present at the same type of conferences and publish in the same papers. And, you can tell who doesn't like each other from the Q&A sections.
Yeah.
When it also comes to public speaking, do you ever get nervous? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Well, I don't know that it's nervousness as much as it is excitement. I get a lot of energy from the crowd. And just a little tip for the geeks in your audience: if your brain doesn't know the difference between excitement and nerves, and so if you find yourself feeling nervous, just tell yourself you're excited, and it'll just shift the entire energy to be more positive versus something that is frightening and fearful. And one tip I'd like to leave with your audience: but I don't tend to get nervous unless the topic is, you drop me in the middle of the Midwest in front of an all-white audience talking about race and equity. There'll be a little bit of nerves. And one way that I get beyond that is I just say it. I just call it out. Humor is my number one value, and so I tell a joke about it at the very beginning. Everybody laughs, and then we're on to the races.
You know what? I think you're absolutely right when it comes to, just shifting your mindset into something positive as opposed to negative. If you tell yourself that you're not very good at public speaking, you'll be right every time. So if you tell yourself you're nervous, yeah, you're right. Shift it to, no, I'm excited. And then you go out there and tell a group of white people about race and equity. So, you've given some really great tips for the people listening or watching about public speaking. Are there any other tips you would like to share?
I would just like to this one final idea is just to invite your audience to go super deep on your subject matter expertise. Go really, really deep on your expertise, but then know a little bit about a lot of things. So I know some people either do one or the other, and it'll take discipline to do both. You don't need to go deep on 20 subjects, but definitely know as much as there is to know about your main idea. Who has the dissenting opinions? Be prepared to answer any questions about the dissenting opinions in those spaces, but know a little bit about a lot of different things, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Be well versed in lots of topics.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that is especially applicable to people that are in the technical fields. That's kind of how we ended up there in the first place. We're really good at one thing or a couple things, and we go really deep into it. People like yourself, like move into more leadership type of roles. I think that's more applicable to those who want to broaden out and think about other things. You don't want to think of just of technical stuff. You want to think about how to lead people as well, and it's really a great idea to broaden that way as well. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in regards to things that you're working on?
So one thing that our organization is working on right now is just trying to figure out a way to just let people, more audience members know, or just more people in the world know that we are kind of the best there is at helping difference get along on teams. And so whether or not that is, how can you help your technical folks get along with the marketing group or whatever the difference is, we specialize in helping difference get along. And if people have those challenges, we hope that they would reach out on our website, livelyparadox.com.
Okay. Hey, you're trying to get the engineers to get along with marketing? Good luck. You got your work cut out for you.
I know. And we want to put a stake in the sand and say we are the best there is at that.
Wonderful. Everybody, this marks the end of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, please take care.
Thank you, Neil.
You got it.